So I frequently get asked the same question about how hard it is to put together a game of Monster of the Week, how much work goes into the games I produce, which is a little bit of a bullshit question because I'm anal retentive. If you ever played one of my games through the Keen Minds server, you know that I put way too much work into certain activities because of just character defects, delightful character defects. Regardless, this video will go through a brief tutorial of what I do. Not to say that that is the absolute method of developing Monster of the Week content for online VTT, but I find it fucking easy. If you've never actually heard of Monster of the Week, this is your first time. Monster of the Week is put forth by Evil Hat Productions. It is a game that focuses entirely on collaborative storytelling, which I find just a palate cleanser from my usual 5e games. They're easy to run as a host. I believe the correct term is keeper, and as a player, equally quick to jump into production of. For me, it all starts with a map, a location, and a concept. For concepts, I am notorious for stealing from my favorite author, Dean Koontz. I have run one game based on his Outsiders production, which you will see later in this video. For the most part, though, currently I am working on a rendition of his book, The Taking, which currently nobody is aware of, and I'm hoping nobody has read. Most games in Monster of the Week take part in a sleepy little town, which is a little bit subjective. I like to use California because, again, I'm lazy, and to do that, I like to use Google Earth. I just kind of pick a spot, usually in the United States, again, usually in California, because coastal towns make for easy pickings. In this instance, I have actually taken a place in mind along the Californian coast because that's where my party is currently stuck. In Cayucos, and I apologize to anybody who knows the correct pronunciation of that. I do not. It is a town that sits at population of 2,500, which is perfect for what I want. I want a sleepy little coastal town that will be overtaken by a strange menace and force a little bit of a survival narrative. Uh, the other benefit of pulling directly from Google Maps is that, and real places, is that I don't have to fucking know anything about this area in general. Little anecdotal facts like the population, where it sits, the streets, all that good stuff is already filled, and I also get a pretty good idea of the locations here. There's a motel. Won't be relevant in my game. All the bed and breakfasts won't be relevant in my game. But there are some structures that could, work as ritzy neighborhoods. I do need a bar, and somewhere down here will totally facilitate that. Or down here, I try to use as much as the original layout as possible. I'm lazy. Uh, Little print screen action. You get something like this. I left a little doobie bobble in there. Patent pended on doobie bobble. I also clear out again because I'm anal retentive. I don't want any of this stuff. I don't want people asking me what Beach Walker Inn is all about if I'm not using Beach Walker Inn in my game. Um, I don't want any of that stuff. I don't care about Woodsman's Cabinets. Woodsman's Cabinets, shout out to you guys if you ever want to promote me. Probably not after this. What I do want is layers. I always want terrain because, again, it just helps me. It doesn't look the prettiest when you zoom in. Well, unless you zoom in, I should say. But it gives a better overlook for what I'm looking for. And I also want to remove all the labels because I don't care about Woodman's Cabinets. Woodsman's, I'm very sorry. Once I've got my cap, I put this back on because, again, I'm going to steal some of this information. Like Cabrillo Highway is very relevant. And then it's just kind of a matter of pulling information from one to the other, starting with things I know exist. I actually took this a little further down than the previous image. I took this of a little neighborhood called Montecito Point, which has some stuff I can use. Look for my good old-fashioned line tool. Line tool in 3D Paint sucks. Calling you out on that one, Microsoft. Not a big fan. However, this part is probably I find the most therapeutic, where I just literally color in the crap I need. Again, I hate using this, but it is what it is. Where is the color palette? Oh, I can choose it after the fact. Well, that's stupid. All I want to do is fill in the highway with 2D shapes. It doesn't have to be pretty unless, again, like me, you're extremely anal retentive, in which case, regardless of what I tell you, it's going to be not necessarily pretty, but oh, there was an easier way to do this. Yeah, if you just hit the stamp tool, that makes life a lot easier for everybody involved. Oh, I went a little too stampy. Oh, I went way too stampy. And again, stuff like this doesn't have to be pretty. All we need to know is that this is a major causeway. It's hopefully, unless you have really weird players, it's never going to come up. Cabrillo Highway will be mentioned when they move. Aside from that, nobody's going to care where Cabrillo Highway is. I'm not going to bother highlighting any other streets either. It doesn't come up very often. I usually just make up a name as I go along because I'm a lazy DM. What I do care about though is specific points of reference, and I'm always on the fence about this because I don't necessarily like having the full layout. If we take a look at my previously mentioned game, Outsiders, ignore all the background content, but this is typically what my maps look like. I'm just going to kill all these people. It has labeled locations. It helps because people want to know what Benedine is. You'll see Cabrillo Highway. Oh, I'm actually using Cabrillo Highway twice. They're just going to stay on the same highway. Um, Buzzard's Roost Viewpoint was a little camp that happened. I mean, they don't, them knowing about it doesn't matter. They have to get to it. They had to actually access Ventana Wilderness, a little hiker's camp and tour guide operation, and got led into this area. The only problem you run into is things like residences. I might utilize invisible tokens for that moving forward, because Cornell Residence, though it never came up until the very end of the game where they needed to go, eventually someone, when I mentioned that it was on the long Coastal Ridge Road, because it didn't populate the rest of this, somebody was just like, "Oh, I want to go check out Cornell Residence." But some landmarks don't even get used up, like Buscom Animal Clinic. Nobody used this. Nobody in my game that day. We went 4 hours, I believe. Nobody used Buscom Animal Clinic, and you don't need this. This is just because I'm nuts. I know that's not the correct politically correct term, but I'm allowed to say it. I think Big Sur region is the region I stole for this map. So when it all goes together, once I outline everything, I will outline some major causeways. I do like to use bigger roads that lead to places, sometimes because there's encounters on these roads I utilize to screw with people. Um, and it adds a little bit of extra detail. But for the most part, this is what you end up with. And again, you don't need to use a VTT. I find it easier to use Roll20 because I've purchased the Monster of the Week content, again, by Evil Hat Games. But the big sell point for me is that one, uh, any images I need, any supportive images, I can actually use this all as a token and just roll it. So I always start with my map, but because Monster of the Week doesn't require a lot of visual aids, and again, you don't need these. This is just the work I put in for my players. I can set it up. This was the antagonist. I just wanted them to have a great viewpoint of this creepy monster. I found a really good image online, representative of that. I forget who the artist is. Please don't sue me. Generic images. This was for the cave. This was to indicate that they were in a forest. These are stock photos you can find almost anywhere. Don't use a lot. If you have a bar scene, maybe a picture of the bar would be functional. Traditionally, in Monster of the Week, they don't have a lot of visual aids, which is kind of a good thing. This is, for example, Haunting at Old Grand, I believe it has a few different variations. Spoilers ahead. Not really, because I don't know what these are even in reference to. So that is essentially the amount of work that it takes. This does not span 10 minutes. This typically spans like 3 days because I do it in chunks. But yeah, if you're ever playing Monster of the Week with me, just this is a little bit of behind the scenes look into how much fucking work I put in because I love you. Um, or because you've solicited me to do so. That's also a big gear point. As far as creatures, making the encounters themselves, Monster of the Week by Evil Hat Games has a remarkably intuitive system for this. I usually print it out on paper, and when I'm sitting in the living room watching something, I'll just write out ideas that I have. I steal a lot of tropes, I'm not going to lie, from popular media. Again, I'm stealing these from Dean Koontz, who just has such a great library of books for this purpose. Lots of creepy things happen to a specific protagonist that has to be resolved in a very intuitive way. So I love utilizing these. In The Taken, the books I've done so far are some of my favorites. The Taking by Dean Koontz, and what was the other one? Fuck, is my favorite book. Oh, Watchers by Dean Koontz. Both books that really strike a chord. Uh, yeah, so if you enjoyed this at all or found it all intuitive, hit me up. Otherwise, thank you for watching.